starting the recording now. Well, welcome to Improving Team Collaboration with Microsoft Teams. We really want to focus in and understand just the overall capabilities of what Teams can bring us. And there is so much that what we've found to where we're at today, especially when we started, we really didn't have an understanding of how powerful this really could turn out to be. It's definitely a different way of thinking. So I challenge each of you to, as you watch today, think of, hey, how can I improve the business process or the business workflow of how I interact and how I work throughout the day. And really, when it comes to thinking of the traditional way or the older way, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just there's a new way of doing this, and it really is just even the ability to share a file, the ability to communicate with your teammates, the ability to have a video conference with your teammates. All of these things are wrapped up into this platform for better team collaboration. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit, or what I'm going to talk about is how Teams is changing the landscape of what we've been able to do. I think the old conference rooms of the past are going to be different moving forward. You know, this whole ability for us to really sit and think about, hey, how can we change? Teams is really the revolutionary piece of what we're doing. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and I'm going to hopefully not have everybody be able to see their. I'm going to jump into a few screens here. But really give a background of what is Teams and what is it that we're doing from a Teams perspective. So I just want to make sure that everybody can see my screen. Nancy, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. And what I'm doing now is I'm building off of what Austin talked about last week. And what he really went into is the basic fundamentals. And he skipped over this Teams button. And this is the side menu. And this is where you're actually going to find your teams. Now, what you're going to look inside of this, once you get inside of the Teams level of Teams, it's so confusing because there's groups, teams, channels, you know, all these different names. But just think of how you would organize your team. And in this case, I'm a member of several teams. I have lots of teams that have been set up. I've hidden a few teams, hidden a few channels, because it does get overwhelming. It's like anything that's really good. There's so much that sometimes you just need to narrow it in to get to where you need to be. So really understanding the purpose of Teams. We talked a little bit about really the collaboration space that's really focused on what we're doing. With the old way, with traditional file servers and email, everybody had to send, you know, different versions, 15 versions, you know, of the same file flying around. And before we had cloud storage, we were always concerned about on the email side how big your inbox was. And so we would set limits, and people would have to create PSTs and all these other things. Speaking of PSTs, there's a plug out there where we're getting rid of PSTs and moving all your mail to the cloud. Be on the lookout for that. There's a lot of cool stuff coming from the IT team on that one. So, but I think from a team's perspective, understanding what it is your area, your cubicle space, your office, it's what you define and how you work as a team. And what really has come to fruition for us is everybody works a little differently. But if we all have that same platform that we can check in, check out documents, we can, you know, collaborate with your team instantly. And then really the most important thing that is missed across, because I get this question all the time, why should I use Teams when I have email? Why should I use Teams if I already have a file server? Why should I use Teams if I have all these things already in existence to do my job? Why would I ever want to change? And that's what I hope to answer for you today. What we're wanting to do is just do a quick overview of what all the different areas are, and for us to really understand the different nuances of Teams. So when we go in and we're like, hey, when I look at Teams, mine looks nothing like yours, Tim. Like, why is there not a kind of a menu that I can go pick and join the teams that I want to join? Well, what we had to do early on when we started rolling out Teams is make a big decision. We had to lock down the creation of teams so that we could actually control how much space we're using, and create an efficient naming convention, an efficient process for us to be able to manage. So we didn't have duplicate teams. So we don't have, just these orphan teams out there that over time would be a really messy, or we just wanted to get organized. So what we did is we created a process. And if anybody's never looked in ServiceNow, there is a way for you to go and create a request form in ServiceNow. It's called Office 365 Group Request. And what this does is it creates a request to our team that we go and do a double check to make sure that one doesn't already exist. If one already exists, we'll refer back to you like, hey, we think this is a match. Because what we're trying to do is control that back end of what we're doing. Because we're also trying to, not only protect, just all the different things that go into good IT fundamentals. This is the first start of it. So everybody who wants to create a team, this is your first step. Actually, second step. First step is to ask your colleagues, hey, do we have a team already? So we're going to start there. In doing so, you just fill out this form, submit it, and we'll get moving on it and get back to you on your request. So with that, we have inside of our teams. In this case, in my example, I have several that I'm part of, and I'm manage these teams. And what I'm doing inside of these is really trying to help create efficiency so that we have good collaboration. We have the right security. Only people can get to these. Because what we've ended up doing in teams is creating private teams versus a public team. Understanding the differences of that from a public team and a private team, and why that's important is because if you go down here to try and click, hey, I want to join or create a team, I need to be able to change this. So right now, there are no public teams that I could join. If there were teams on here that were public, it would all sit in just 1 second. My printer just went crazy. But in doing this, what we want to do with these private teams is the public teams that'll show up here. And this is that organization with Teams is the new way to get to all your information. And let me step back and talk a little bit about that, because the organization of Teams really interacts with your intranets, your file servers, your email. All of this all becomes the hub inside of Teams. And so that's why one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, why do I have a opportunity here to join a team, but there's nothing here and I don't have a code? How do I do that? And I think these are the reasons, or at least I look at it as the owner of a team. And right now I'm the owner of these teams that you see here. And what I can do is I can go in and I can do all the things that I want to do. I can go add people. I can set the security level for these people. And I can also, I can remove access. So no longer do you need to have IT control the nuances of each channel, but think of the way that if you ever onboard a new employee, how daunting of a task it is to go find all your stuff and have that onboarding be. How cool would it be to have one spot where you could go and everything would be there? So if I added a new network engineer, I could actually add them to this team. Today, Nancy is going to be my new network engineer that's going to join our team, and I'm going to add her to the networking team. So if I add her into this networking team, she is going to have access to the networking team, and she can see everything that's going on inside of the networking team. So these are all the people that are inside of our networking team. I can go and adjust their level of access, and this is only as the owner of this team that have access to this type of settings. So I want to make sure that we really understand what this is and how it's used. And because I think for me, it gets IT out of the business. It's more like SharePoint than it is a traditional file server. The traditional file server, you had to call IT to say, hey, I need Nancy to have the same access as Tanner. And in IT, we're like, well, I don't even know what Nancy is, or what Tanner is, how do I know exactly? And this is where we can hand that workload off to the individual team owners to be able to help delineate this level of access. So inside of this, there are different levels of settings, as far as what we want to do. And if I wanted to granular pretty much set different settings for each of the channels. I can get in here and I can say, okay, I want to make sure that, I don't want to show it for this person, but I can actually have it, really be very descriptive of what that experience will be for each of the individual users. Inside of the settings, you can go in and we haven't messed on this side for a lot of reasons, just trying to keep it standard. But you could add a team picture. You can go in and really get into the different levels of settings for each of the different channels that are going on within this team. So again, this is a team at this level, and these are channels. And think of it as this is a wrapper to everything that's going on inside of this team. So just to kind of talk a little bit about that. And then for us, guest permissions. Probably one of the biggest things that are always asked, or at least, how do I share with the outside world? I have a team that is not just, hey, I have 4 people that sit in the same office. I have to actually work with somebody outside the organization. And this is one where, man, the security alerts, alarm bells go off, red alerts, like, hey, there's a lot that goes into that, because not only when we want to share with the outside world, somebody who shares a location or a file and has read-write access, that person on the other end, we have to trust that that is the right person, because I think all of you have been through security training, social engineering, all the advanced level of attacks that are coming. They're getting smarter and smarter and smart and more sophisticated. And for us, we really want to partner with each of you to make sure that as you bring in a guest, we help you understand what are the risks. Obviously the rewards are huge, right? We don't want to be the department of no, but we also want to help you understand, hey, if you share this with this external party and they have the same access, they could drop a file in and it could cause, some sort of corruption. And that's encryption, I should say, not corruption, but encryption of something that, hey, we just want to make sure we do our due diligence, partner with our security team, partner with us. So as it comes to guest access, we want to make sure that that's really set up well. So, all these features, all these settings, understanding how to, be able to get into these, what the mentions are. I'm sure everybody's heard of tagging, but I just want to reiterate, this is probably the best thing, because inside of it, as you guys grow in the maturity of Teams rollout and that kind of that next phase of Microsoft Teams, what we have to worry about is the overload of notifications. So every team that I'm a part of, it's basically another alert that goes off. And pretty soon you get so many alerts that you're like, man, I don't want any more alerts. So what I've done is I've actually gone in and I manage my notifications so that I can actually at the channel level. So this is where I'm actually going to be getting these alerts from. But if I go back to this, let's go back to the TELUS meeting that I had, and I look at my channel notifications, this is where I've actually turned off, because I don't want to be notified every time there's a new post. But if somebody wants to actually mention this, it's really important to understand what that means. And when you do the at mention, this is where I would actually put in Nancy. And if it puts her name in kind of a hyperlink mode, meaning there's some intelligence going on that, hey, I've actually notified Nancy, and I can backspace to delete her last name. And what that does is it's going to actually notify and pop up on Nancy's screen, hey, I've actually, I have something for you to call to attention. So I'm just going to say good afternoon. Welcome to the TELUS meeting. So now on her side, she's going to get an alert, and she's going to be able to respond to that by clicking this reply button here. One of the big, as you start using Teams, understanding where to reply to a message. Never reply, or I shouldn't say never. It's preferred if you hit the reply underneath the message that was posted versus starting a new conversation. So as you start to understand how this works, this will then be rolled up into this same conversation that people will be able to see and respond to while you're able to work through these nuances of Teams. So I think from how these teams are set up, how you're requesting them, how you're actually getting them kind of set up with the right members, the right settings, there's a lot to it. And it's one of those things that I would love to partner with you on. Hey, if there are ways to set up teams and have it be very efficient, again, we're setting up private teams, not public teams, because public teams are really tied into the intranets, the public SharePoint sites. And when I say public, I don't mean to the outside world, just to everybody in the organization. And that really takes a lot of planning that I know our development team is working through to really understand how to tie the intranets back into Teams. Because someday when you're in HR or you have an HR question, or you can actually go to Teams, click on HR, and go search through the different things there, post a file, and do all the things that you would normally do, but it would show up in the public SharePoint site for the enterprise or for the company that you're working for. And so what we want to do is we want to be very mindful of that, so that as we're working, we don't publish something that we shouldn't. So we're about 15 minutes in. I think from my standpoint, I just want to stop and kind of just review like I've done with here's the teams, here's the channel. I've showed you how to manage the alerts. You can't manage alerts well, it's best to manage the alerts at the channel level. And that's what I was showing at this point with how to do this side of it. And then being able to post inside of the teams, because here's what you're thinking about. If I'm a new person like Nancy brought into this, she's able to now look at this TELUS notes that I've posted. And this was just a OneNote tab that I've added into the system. And what she can do is she can actually go look at these TELUS notes and she can actually review them. And this is something that we keep on a weekly basis. We have or bi-weekly basis. We have a meeting with TELUS, and we talk about all the different things that are going on there. And so if Nancy were to have a question, or she would be able to really have that leg up on having the history and the narrative of what's going on. Now, as I uploaded this file, this was a OneNote file, it uploaded into the actual file repository or document library. So people who have used SharePoint understand, hey, there is a this kind of looks like SharePoint. And I think what's nice about this, and kind of what I'm trying to have people start thinking differently about, is, hey, a traditional file server is great. It's well protected, it's well backed up. But the problem that we have with them is it's hard to share and reach them from outside the organization. And with with the pandemic and what we had to go through with COVID, trying to get everybody access to their stuff, you had to be connected to the VPN. You had to, and I think what we want to do is look at this a little differently and say, hey, if we get it into Teams, it's now available. I don't have to be connected to the VPN, and I can actually share content and have that context around what that file is all about. So if I look at kind of a couple of these options in sharing a file, this is one that I've uploaded. But if I wanted to upload another one, and I'm just going to go out and grab, let's go here to my, I had a favorites here. I have a conference room document that I'm working on. We're trying to standardize our conference rooms across the enterprise. So this is a document that I want to share with the network team and saying, hey, there's some new connectivity with TELUS. I want you guys to review this document. So what I've done is I've gone out, I've clicked upload, I've actually found the document that I wanted, and I uploaded it. Now, if I'm Nancy, or if I'm somebody that wanted to actually look at this and I see that it's posted, there's a couple things I can do. I can click on it. I can actually click the ellipsis, and I can actually open it inside the browser in Excel online, or I can actually open it in Excel, so the actual full document. So I prefer to open it on Excel online, because what that does is it gives me the ability now to actually share and collaborate this online, and it feels right now. This is I used to be a traditional, hey, this is what we would do, and this is I would use the client, meaning I would download it to my machine, and then now if somebody actually jumped into Teams, opened it up, you could actually see their little icon here of them sharing that document. And the only person that has access to this document are the people inside of that team. So by me uploading this into the networking team, so I'm just going to flip back to this right here. And if I go to my files, the only people that have access to this section are the people that are part of the networking team that I showed you earlier. So it really does give you that security. It gets IT out of the way in a good way. Sorry, we're hopefully partnering with you, but we really are trying to create this environment where you can actually do this collaboration and create that modern workplace. So we've talked about the channels. There is something other, like a really cool thing that if I actually have set up, and I really don't have the perfect use case for it, but if there was a way that I actually needed to send an email to this team, I could actually create a contact, and I just copied that. Sorry. And if I look at, I'm just going to do this really quickly. This is a test email. And what will happen is it'll actually go out and send it to that specific channel, an email. And you start thinking about it, it's like, wow, how could that help us? Well, there are so many systems out there that send out alerts that you could actually start creating automated systems that would actually send an alert to teams that you could then go in and you could say, oh, hey, wait, I just got something via email. So there's a lot of different things. So like we get a lot of alerts like, hey, servers are down, network is down, that we could actually set up and figure out a way to filter them to the right team. And if it so that not only are they getting a notification to their email, but they're going to get it to Teams. And what we're finding is Teams is that place where people are going to be, and especially if I had this set up, I could actually do an alert and do lots of different things that go into the advanced settings of Teams that we're not going to go into today. But really, from that perspective, I want to make sure that we talk about that. So we've done. There's one big area that we love, or at least I do. It's how I keep track of everything that's going on across our entire team. So from our desktop team to our systems team to our networking team, we use a product called Planner, and Planner is incredibly simple, easy to use. It allows us to quickly if I wanted to update this backup network segmentation project, and if I was one of the users, I could actually come in and move it, to 80% complete, and be able to mark off. I probably shouldn't do this because they're going to say, hey, who's making change to these? But it does make it so that it makes it very easy to keep track of. I want to say more tasks than projects, but it really does help us track what's going on. And there's some easy charts that are put together. It gives us, what's on the schedule, who's doing what, and especially capacity planning. If there's something there that we can, work on, or even if there were ways that you wanted to schedule your resources, you could do that. But this has definitely been a huge win across all of our IT groups, especially in infrastructure, for us to have a standardized way of tracking tasks. This is really easy to set up. It allowed us to really quickly move from Excel. We tried Trello. We've pretty much tried everything out there. This is the one that really has worked well for us. There was one last thing that I wanted to share today, and that was, this is probably your most powerful area, and this is a kind of a cool, kind of goes hidden, and it's search. For us, having that memory of, okay, my file structure, but sometimes I just want to find a file. And this is a ASN change. It's on the networking side that we had to do a huge project for. I was quickly able to just type that in, go search for it. And since it was a file, I was able to go find the file very quickly and be able to track, hey, here's what's going on inside of that. And it's just as something super easy of just being able to search for whatever you want. Don't forget about this search bar. It is super powerful. Well, I think those are all the bullet points that I wanted to go over today. I would like to open up the Q&A session. Does anybody have questions?
I have a question. Nancy
Sure.
from North Van or C-SPAN.
Love it.
Another Nancy. Hey, one quick question. So if I wanted to set up a team, I have to actually go to you first. I have to fill out one of those request forms.
Yes,
Confirm.
it's tough. It's like, do we want to open it up? But in our world, what we're trying to do is have it be controlled, measured, so that we don't have hundreds of teams or duplicate teams, and really what we're after is the orphan teams. Because what we found out is that before we turned it off, we had a person who had created over 100 test teams or test groups, and once we saw that, we're like, oh my gosh, this was one person going in and creating a group with no oversight, no naming conventions, no, and all of a sudden you were like, what do we do? Are they using these? And so we went to that person, and they're like, no, I was just testing this out, because in the old, in Outlook, you could actually go create groups, and you could, and I think for us, we're trying to find that middle ground of how do we're not really going to tell you no. We're just really going to make sure it's set up properly is really what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Hey, Tim, Hamid here. How's it going?
Good.
Good. Hey, Tim, question about the files. When you upload those files, are they live for all those team members to edit in there, or do they have to take it offline, edit, and then reload back in there? And then the second part is, if there's a file missing, what's the restoration? Is it pretty easy to restore those files if it's missing?
Nice question, Hamid. That's actually a really good question. As you upload this file, it is for full collaboration. It is ready to be edited. And for us, it's one of those areas that changes it from being a traditional file server is now it's up in the cloud. And so when you asked, hey, how do I restore it? This is where it does get a little tricky, but there is pretty much a restoration process that you'll have to work with us on how to get that file back. There's pretty much, and I think everybody on the call will understand, there's a recycle bin. There's actually a recycle bin to the recycle bin. So there are two ways for us to get it back. One would be to, go to the SharePoint site, because that's where the file is being stored in a document library. And as a file is deleted, it goes into the recycle bin, and we would be able to, as an admin, be able to restore that. I think does that answer your question, Hamid?
Yeah, perfect. I just
Okay.
wasn't aware of the restoration process.
Yep.
Yeah,
you bet.
Tim, Dave Kerr has a question. He raised his hand.
Sure.
I like the raising the hand thing. That's cool.
Yes.
On the apps that are available there, I noticed Power BI is not available there. Is there a reason for that?
Power BI within Teams, there's a couple ways, and just understanding what that use case is of how you would enable Power BI in Teams. It's not that I would just love to sit down with you and understand what it would be. And since it's a Microsoft app or a plugin, it would be a lot easier to add it in. It's those third-party ones that you're trying to figure out, hey, what data is it capturing? And that's where we would involve the security team to make sure that. But there's no reason. There's no reason. Sorry.
So it was Microsoft Power BI though.
Yeah, and if Microsoft Power BI isn't enabled, we can quickly enable it.
Okay.
It's kind of that same thing. We want to make sure we're thinking about security first, because the last thing we want to do is expose some sort of BI report to an external user that somebody wasn't aware added to a team, and having that conversation with people so that we're really doing our due diligence so that people understand, hey, if I publish this to this team, what external user is added to this team, and make sure you're aware of how that works.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
No, totally. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sean.
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, Tim. Just a couple of quick ones. So thanks for the overview on channels. The Planner app we've been using for a while within Teams, but through Office 365 on Chrome in particular, it's really slick as well and nice to use. But the iOS app for Planner is great if you're jumping between that and Teams. I just wanted to mention that. But the other really great app that we've been using in a tab within a couple of channels is the Forms application as a replacement for Smartsheet. It's most forms and forms engines are pretty overwhelming to create forms. We've managed to replace a few of the things that we've had in Smartsheet, and it's been really easy, really straightforward to use, and it looks pretty good inside the system with some simple Excel lines that it ends up reporting out on. So if you're playing around with some of the tabs in there, the forms one is great.
Sean, thank you so much. Those are two great points. What we've showed today is just a kind of the tip of the iceberg of what is possible. And I think from that standpoint, just having enough people, really working together of, hey, here's a new idea. Here's a way that we could leverage this, even with how powerful Power BI is, how powerful, Power Apps are, how powerful all these new ways to, I don't want to say automate, but create efficiency across the board. There is nothing more powerful that I've seen in my IT career than Microsoft Teams. And I know everybody will laugh at that who knows me really well, is I'm probably one of the biggest, Microsoft fans that you'll meet, just because I see this, really taking off and helping us in so many different levels. So thank you, Sean.
Trevor, you had a question too?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, regarding uploading files to Teams, or actually even, let me back up, creating a new team. When that happens, does that automatically create a new SharePoint site for that team? And what's the library structure for that? Do all the documents live in one library on the site? And as a team owner, or even just a team member, how do we access that SharePoint site, or can we directly?
It is a great question, and that's why that person that will go unnamed, who created 100 teams or groups, also created 100 SharePoint sites, and that's why it was frowned upon. Of, oh my gosh, we've just unleashed this new beast of, we've got to go in and figure out how to control it, and this is the best we've come up with so far. And I know I've talked to so many people out there that, hey, my spouse or my partner or whoever works at another company and they can create all the teams they want. And I'm like, oh, I know, I would love to just let it go, but the organizer in me is like, oh my gosh, it's like that. There just has to be some sort of control behind that. So, sorry, I missed the second part. Was there a second part to that question?
Yeah, there was. So how would one go about accessing the SharePoint site, and then how configurable is that SharePoint site, or is it all just kind of controlled?
No, it's all part of it. That's great question, because for us there are so many different challenges because everything is intertwined. So if I look at my menu here, there's a menu to say open in SharePoint. And when I click on that, it'll actually open it up into our enterprise SharePoint site, and it'll contain, and this is where, since this is a private channel or a private team, it doesn't create that public searchability. It still maintains that security wrapper that we've put up. But this does give us that ability where we can actually come in and we can actually put in the, that template, that look and feel, of C-SPAN, modern, whatever company we want this to look like, and really inherit that. Since you're a team of this or a member of this team, it has this look and feel. So.
I was more wondering about creating custom lists or libraries, or doing that, adding different metadata columns and stuff like that, and how that interfaces back to Teams.
Yeah, everything that you're talking about, you can do. It does have that capability. Most of the time, though, it's best to, if you're doing advanced SharePoint things or tech, just the nuances or changes that you're doing there, you want to actually do it in SharePoint versus trying to do everything in Teams. But like I said before, I think the powerful part of this, and I think everybody here is, at least I'm working on, hey, if I brought somebody else in new to replace me, would they even have a chance to know where everything is at? And I think from that, if I had this ability where I could keep adding, new items into this that are shareable, like if I wanted to actually add in a spreadsheet, or I wanted to add in, I can actually go add these items in, to be able to have a dashboard for new employees, you know, and so they would have one place to go to get to E1 or to get to, you know, like having this interface. Maybe E1's not the best. I should have confirmed that that was okay to say. But again, it's totally is, because these are things that as we start working through this, we want to make sure we're always thinking the modern workplace. How do we keep this modern and how do we keep it dynamic? Because the days of just setting it and forgetting it, they're gone.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Victoria.
Hi. So for teams or groups that are project-based, is it better to create a team for them or a channel under a team?
Victoria, great question. This is a good debate because I think you could go either way depending on what the project is. For us, we have a team that is a good one is this PST migration. I keep selling this PST migration. We are working hard to get this one moving. It's a project that we went and set up based on a couple things. One, we wanted to make sure that we could track both with a calendar, we could add channels. There were a smaller group, but it really comes down to this. If your team changes by members a lot, it's best to have multiple teams for that. But if you have a team that you're working with consistently, it's best to have, because I come back to the notifications, I come back from the ease of use, I come back to the, hey, if I had everything underneath this, like if you looked at our IT department, you would be able to see if we created this and broke it out, if each of these were its own, it would be overwhelming to manage all the different teams. It would be hard to do that. So, but if I have these projects that we've labeled with PRJ, I can actually go in now and have it be something that would be part of the kind of that migration side. So,
I was just texting her. Do you want to go together?
Whoops. Hold for just a second. Oh, I can't mute. My mute button's gone. Sorry.
So
Unmuted now. Perfect. Okay.
So
All
then
right.
a quick follow-up to that, if it is something that's project-based, and maybe this is a continuation of that debate, once the project is completed, is there kind of a best practice in place for archiving that information, that SharePoint site, that Teams?
The archiving of a team, there's ways, because we're working hard to migrate teams, consolidate teams through tenant consolidation. And one of the things, there's tools out there that can back them up. But if it's a project SharePoint document library, because one of the areas that I don't know if everybody saw that when I was doing that. I'm just going to flip through it really quickly. If I'm in this and I click my files section and I actually want to open it in SharePoint, and what I'm getting to here is I can actually, this is now a document library that what I'm missing in this kind of my example that I'm trying to do here is if I wanted to create an archive, I could actually just do a new folder, slide everything up, and it would be in an archive for, the year 2020. That would be one moment, but I wouldn't capture the context of in it. And the way I understand it is if your project, your team actually is retired and you want to archive it, the archiving of that team, we can hide that team. So it's not visible, but you can always reference it. And I think for me, it's how much of it do you want to have that context? Because you have the collaboration, so all the chats, might have the planner associated with it. There's a lot of plugins that go into that. So lots of things to think about. But if I wanted to, and just want to show one more example here, if I actually wanted to sync this library to my computer, because I know there's a lot of traditional file explorer people, you can actually go in and you can actually click on your the file explorer, and over here on the side it'll actually start synchronizing to your local folder. So as I was showing before, so if there was a way, sorry for Victoria, I think for me it's if I wanted to archive just the files, and I think that because you're talking specifically about projects that you're working on to create files, you could go in here and create your own and have this be a space where you could actually have that archive. Because I think that's what we're trying to figure out is what does everybody's workflow look like? And then, like you said, how do we archive it? So there's lots of opportunity, but I'd have to sit with you and understand what those nuances are.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
Shannon.
I just wanted to expand on something Tim mentioned earlier, and then Nancy Matthews also touched on it. It's with regards to the requesting a team. In OneSource, everybody that's familiar with OneSource, he's already there. Tim, if you'll just go back to the home screen. I just wanted to show everybody where it is. So if you hit submit a service ticket, and depending on which company you're in, it might look a little differently. Just page down, scroll down, hit show more options. It's right there, or you can also just find it in the search bar as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Shannon.
Bet.
Any other questions? Well, I'd like to say thank you for joining today's session. We've definitely covered a lot. Please be sure everybody that's joined and registered will get a copy or an email alert to join or to review the recording, and then we'll be able to share that with everyone. And again, be on the lookout for these Tech Academy training sessions. I think they're helpful. I hope, please give us feedback. Because, and again, we're not professional trainers, we're just users of these systems, and we use them extensively, and we're always trying to get better. You know, we're learning just a little bit ahead of everyone, and hopefully we're learning fast enough. But you know what? The most powerful users are you guys who are out there, you know, having the demands of every day, trying to figure out how to get through all this. Let's work together and come up with a great way to get this the best that it possibly can. So thanks again for joining. Next week we have another session that we're going to be doing, and Terry Sheff will be showing how to actually